Today we are answering the question, what tarot cards really are, and can they predict the future? As we take a look at this through the lens of logic and reason, because remember, in the meta-rationalist perspective, we can understand the metaphysical rationally. So we're going to take a look and see how the tarot cards are actually deeply intertwined with our psyche and the structure of the universe. But how can this be? We're going to take a look at some very bad interpretations of this and positive interpretations of this, again, with logic, reason, and understanding this in a way that is conducive to a clear and lucid understanding of existence. It's going to be really good. You don't want to miss it. We might even touch on some extraterrestrial connection. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe if we have time, there's something interesting that I want to mention and throw out there. But before we get started, please like and subscribe. It helps a lot. You know, it gets this information out there. And so please do so that we can spread this info and get this information seen. Also, let's see. We're having a secret members-only video. We have a members-only video every single week. Today's member-only video is the secret code of the universe is God the Programmer, and that's going to be really good. So if you want to be a part of that and access all of our members-only videos, support on Patreon at any tier. It's the best way to support my work. Or tier 2 or higher right here on YouTube by hitting the join button right below this video. Also, be aware of scammers in the comments. There are people pretending to be me, saying to join my WhatsApp and Telegram, and I don't know. That's not me, okay? I don't have a WhatsApp. I don't have a Telegram. Don't fall for that. Also, there are people and groups out there who don't like what I'm doing and who don't like what we are doing and are spreading a lot of misinformation and disinformation about me and us and our group. So just use logic and reason, be on the lookout, and don't fall for the BS. All right, let's begin. What tarot cards really are? Can they actually predict the future? And if so, is it rational, or is this just crazy mystical nonsense? How can we understand the truth behind tarot cards? What are they actually representing here? What are they actually all about? Now, to kick things off, we are going to take a look at this very interesting article over on Open Culture called Carl Jung on the Power of Tarot Cards. They provide doorways to the unconscious and perhaps a way to predict the future. And the reason why I want to take a look at this article is because this is coming from Carl Jung, who is a psychologist, an extremely intelligent psychologist who coined the word archetype, who coined the word introvert. So if you ever heard of like introvert and extrovert, that comes from Carl Jung. Archetype comes from Carl Jung. Very highly intelligent individual. And this is why we want to take a look at tarot in a psychological way. Not only a psychological way, and it's connected to the unconscious though, but when it says perhaps a way to predict the future, we're going to see what exactly that means and how it can possibly be tied to the structure of existence. We talked a little bit about this before in a video of mine called Gnostic Prophecies Revealed, End of the World Secrets, I think, where we talked a bit about like what is prophecy? What is that exactly? Does that actually work? Is that a thing? So you can check out that video too if you're interested in that topic. But let's start looking at this in depth here. So it says, it is generally accepted that the standard deck of playing cards we use, from everything from 3-card Monte to high-stakes Vegas poker, evolved from the tarot. And yeah, this is a very interesting idea. So a lot of people aren't really aware of this, but you know, your standard playing cards likely come from the tarot. So it says the tarot deck has 4 suits with 10 pips or numbered cards in each. And the tarot deck, each suit has 4 court cards: king, queen, jack, and knight. So in essence, if you look at, you know, if you take a regular deck of playing cards, there are some very interesting connections dealing with its connections to the tarot. So, like the tarot has 4 suits, cups, swords, wands, and pentacles. You have the 4 suits and playing cards: diamonds, clubs, spades, hearts. If you actually sum up all the values of the playing cards, if you sum up all their values and include the Joker for 1, the total is 365, counting 1 for every day of the year. And the total number of cards in a deck is 52, corresponding to 52 weeks in a year. So anyway, this is just to point out that playing cards have been influenced by tarot and have been used in fortune telling type of scenarios. But that's kind of interesting. But what does this have to do with tarot? What does it have to do with the nature of reality? So, as Mary K. Greer explains in a 1933 lecture, and by the way, I apologize if I stumble on my words a few times here, because if you'll notice, these goddamn ads just pop up out of nowhere and just randomly, shift everything, and it's very annoying. I can't tell you how many times I have actually just been like, you know what, I'm not going to read this article, because the ads every few seconds, look, do you see it? It makes it unreadable. Anyway, let's ignore that. Let's try to ignore that as these things keep changing. Anyway, in a 1933 lecture, Carl Jung went on at length about his views on the tarot, noting the late medieval cards are, quote, really the origin of our pack of cards, in which the red and black symbolizes the opposites and the division of the four clubs. The four, clubs, spades, diamonds, and hearts, also belong to the individual symbolism. Now, here's the important idea here. Look, they are psychological images, symbols, which one plays as the unconscious seems to play with its contents. So the cards, said Jung, combine in certain ways, and the different combinations correspond to the playful development of mankind. This too is how tarot works, with the added dimensions of symbols or pictures of symbolic situations. The images, the hanged man, the tower, the sun, are sort of archetypal ideas of a differentiated nature. All right, so there's two things that we need to unpack here and understand what we're going to see. So here's the thing. Most people think that tarot cards, they don't do much study into the mechanics of tarot. They pretty much think that, oh, it's this mystical set of cards that can tell your future. You lay out a spread, it tells your future, and it reveals to you different things. And it just, works through magic or the power of thought or the power of the mind or whatever. So this is not a correct view of tarot. What tarot is a psychological reflection of the unconscious mind and the structure and development of the universe. Now, the reason why this is because we have to remember here that tarot is completely different than something like physics. Physics is extremely rigorous, deals with linear thought processes, and models the tangible physical world. It's very left brain oriented. Tarot is the complete opposite. It's very right brain oriented. So the tarot also can represent the structure of the universe and the development of the universe, as well as the structure of the unconscious mind and the development of the mind, but in a symbolic and archetypal, pictorial, narrative sense. Not in terms of linear, logical, structured ways of thinking, but rather much more like a dream, where things are interpreted in forms of patterns and symbols and metaphors and archetypes. So, in other words, your unconscious mind doesn't communicate in words. Your unconscious doesn't go, hey, you know what? I really think that, you should focus this, you should be focusing on this thing in your life. No, that's not how your unconscious operates. Your unconscious will cause you to have a dream in which some symbolic scenario will manifest, which will ultimately have the meaning that, hey, maybe you shouldn't be drinking so much or something. So likewise, the tarot is a set of deeply rich symbolic archetypal imagery. And if this sounds a little abstract or doesn't quite click right away, just go with me here for a minute. It'll click. If it's your first time hearing this, it might take a minute. So tarot cards are, I am going to minimize this for a minute? Because the advertisements are so distracting. They keep changing. It's very annoying. Anyway, so you have these rich archetypal structures, these rich archetypal imagery. And this rich archetypal imagery resonates with your unconscious mind because your unconscious mind communicates in symbols and archetypes. It doesn't communicate through linear thought processes. So when you are engaging with the tarot, you are engaging sort of like with a set of symbols that represent a language that your unconscious understands. And so even a lot of, well, I don't know if a lot, but some Jungian psychologists will even use tarot cards in their practice. They'll have people look at tarot cards and tell them, hey, what do you think that this card means? What do you think that this card says to you? And you can have, you know, a multiplicity of people, you know, look at the same card and look at it in a different way. You know, you might have one person who's looking at a card and the cup is full and they have a happy face and they're like, oh, this makes me feel really happy and I feel very positive about this. It reminds me of, you know, my childhood when I was really happy. And then another person might notice something completely different. They'll say, well, actually, like if you look in the background, there's this dark shadow and, you know, this is really, you know, I can see some like a storm coming. And this, you know, to me, like, I feel like, yeah, things might be happy right now, but there's really this dark presence underneath it all, and the happiness is just fake. So what's happening here is that the unconscious is using the cards as a canvas to project, and then you can unlock a lot about what's going on in your mind, because of course one person who interprets it in a happy way and another person who interprets it in a negative way is having different parts of their psyche activate. And so it reveals that, and it kind of shines a light on the unconscious, helping to get a better idea of one's unconscious mind. But I'm just using this as an example. The tarot is a rich. Let's bring this article up again, so that with this in mind we can continue here, okay? Because this gets more in depth. It says, thus far, Jung hasn't said anything that most orthodox Jungian psychologists would find disagreeable, but he goes even further and claims that indeed we can predict the future. So this is important. So let's talk about this. When we're talking about the tarot can be a very powerful tool for unlocking your unconscious or working with your unconscious mind. You can get it to have, like I said, different unconscious aspects come to the surface, explore your unconscious. It's like dreaming awake. And you can do dream analysis. You can do analysis with the tarot card. You can use it to unlock your intuition as well as a helpful way to explore your intuition. It's a rich, you know, there is nothing magical or quote unquote supernatural happening here in something that's divorced from reason. It's all a symbolic communication with your unconscious mind. So one has to remember that the tarot is powerful when it unlocks your abilities, your own power, but you don't want to have the tarot have power over you. And that's an important difference. And that's the difference between someone who understands the tarot as a tool to unlock their unconscious and someone who uses the tarot as sort of a religious crutch. And that's when people get really obsessed with the cards and they go, oh, they can't make a decision without pulling cards and seeing what the cards say. If the card tells them a certain thing is going to happen, they believe that that thing is going to happen. If it says that they should break up with someone, they're going to go break up with someone. Now the card has power over you. Now the cards have power over you. It's become another kind of religion, and it's just as bad as praying or reading the Bible or you know, putting your faith in an external being or external entity. You're giving your power away. You've given your power away to the cards. That's a negative way of doing tarot. Positive way of doing tarot is when you understand that when it augments your own intuition. You're using it to unlock your own intuition. You can still pull cards like, oh, you know, if something's coming up, you know, an event's coming up and you want to pull cards about it, you can pull cards to help it unlock your intuition about that. And certain things might might come up in your unconscious that you haven't considered before. But it's not about relying on them to make a decision or tell you what to do or guide your life. It's using it to unlock your own unconscious psychological abilities. But what about predicting the future? Because that seems to be going a step further. That seems to be like, okay, now we're entering in some irrational, crazy territory. Can they be used to predict the future? Well, the answer here is complicated, and let's see what Jung has to say, and we'll explain it. So Jung says we can predict the future when we know how the present moment evolved from the past. And this is important. He called for an intuitive method that has the purpose of understanding the flow of life, possibly even predicting future events, at all events lending itself to the reading of the conditions of the present moment. He compared this process to the Chinese I Ching and other such practices. As analyst Marie-Louise van France recounts in her book Psyche and Matter, hold on here. Okay, let's all right, hold on, let me skip that actually. Okay, here's the important aspect. Content seemed to matter much less than form. Invoking the Swedenborgian doctrine of correspondences, Jung notices in his lecture, man has always felt the need of finding an access through the unconscious to the meaning of an actual condition, because there is a sort of correspondence or a likeness between the prevailing conditions and the conditions of the collective unconscious. So, what does this mean here? This means that the cards reflect a formal unfolding aspect of reality. And by recognizing that pattern, it can help us to predict future events in a formal sense, not in the sense of content. And I talked about this before in my video on Gnostic prophecies, how it's about form and not content. And what this means is what the Tarot represents. So the Tarot is very cool, especially the major arcana. So the major arcana represents the psyche, and it also represents the evolution of a mind. And not only does it represent the psyche and the evolution of a mind, but it also represents the universe and the evolution of the universe, because as above, so below. The universe is a collective of minds. And so as individual minds evolve, the collective evolves. So, and I'll say this again, what the Tarot is, especially the major arcana, is a symbolic, archetypal system of rich imagery that reflects the psyche and its evolutionary process, as well as the universe and its evolutionary process. Now, this is done so in terms of form. Now, what I mean by in terms of form is there's a certain pattern to the way reality unfolds. Reality will unfold in a certain pattern, but the particular details of those patterns are contingent and changing. And what Tarot helps us look at is the formal overarching structure rather than the particular contents. So here's an example. If you look at all human beings follow a similar path of growth. They start off as a baby where they have certain things that they can do. They become a toddler and are, begin to learn how to read and write and talk as they start to become a little older, and then they become a teenager, and that's when a rebellious phase usually starts, and in their 20s they start to learn how to have an independent life, and then they get older, etc. Every human has a particular trajectory that they follow that's pretty much shared by all humans. However, every person is going to have a very unique experience. One person is going to be named Billy and have a mother and a father and go to school in Connecticut and have a, get a degree in philosophy or whatever. Someone else might be, born into poverty and their life is a struggle every day. And the particulars of each human being is totally different. Every human being has a unique experience despite sharing the same formal growth pattern of baby to toddler to adolescent to young adult to an elder person to death. That pattern is pretty much equivalent. There are, of course, some exceptions, of course, but it's pretty equivalent all across humanity. So this is the difference between looking at a formal pattern, and I'm using an analogy here, but you get the idea, and the particular contents. So one could predict, let's say you have a baby. You could predict the future that baby is going to become an adult. That's predicting a future in a certain way. You can predict the future that, barring any unfortunate deaths, right? You can predict the future that baby will become an adult. You can't predict all the specific aspects of that child's life. You can't predict that on October 29th in 2036 they're going to graduate film school, and what you can't predict those particular things. But you can predict, it's going to be an adult. Now that might seem trivial, like, okay, well, so what? That's stupid. Of course it's going to become an adult. But when you look at reality as a whole, you can see these same formal patterns and predict how reality will unfold. And thus you can predict a particular pattern that reality will take. You can't predict the specific contents, the specific contingent facts of what will take place. But the overarching pattern you'll be able to see. Because if you look at the overarching pattern of the universe, you can see it has stages of development, just like a human has stages of development. The universe has stages of development. And so when you look at that pattern, you can predict the future of what those next stages of development will be. Now, there's nothing irrational or woo-woo about this, just like there's nothing irrational about saying, a child will become an adult. When you look at the pattern of the universe, you can understand logically and rationally how it's going to unfold in a certain way. Now, same thing when it comes to the psyche and the evolution of a mind. You can see that consciousness evolves in a certain way and that it will unfold in a certain way. I mean, this is what Hegel's phenomenology of spirit is all about. The phenomenology of spirit tracks the evolution of consciousness all the way from basic bare consciousness to God consciousness. It tracks that evolutionary journey. Not everything in that book is correct, but you can see in broad strokes, that's what it's doing. It's recognizing patterns, putting together logical underpinnings of existence in a way that shows what a future unfoldment will look like. So all this to say is that what the Tarot shows is the major arcana is a step-by-step evolutionary process of the evolution of the universe as well as the evolution of the individual mind. Just like how, like if you look at each one of these cards here on screen, you have you have them in order here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, well, they're not all in order, but you see what I mean. You have stages of development put forward, just like how you might show stages of development of a human, from baby to toddler to adolescent to young adult, etc. You're going to have from the fool to the magician to the high priestess, etc., etc., etc. So, obviously, though, it's done in a symbolic and archetypal and metaphorical way. It's done in an archetypal, metaphorical way. And let me just give you one example where the magician can be looked at as the faculty of mind that simply makes choices or decisions. Because the magician, symbolically and archetypally, has power over the elements. So the magician has power over the elements. And so this is about developing the ability to simply make choices and changes. And it's card number one. So obviously this is a very, very, very simple form of the psyche. But if you track all these cards, they form a development of the psyche or the psychic structure. So for example, when you get over to the Hierophant represents the ego. Now the ego is different than the magician. The ego is one that has a conscious reflection of self-identity and can make choices based on, self-reflective, self-aware, conscious thought. Now, of course, there is no universal right way to interpret tarot cards. Tarot cards are all about symbolic, rich, archetypal imagery. So everyone's going to interpret it a little different. And this is why one has to realize when they're working with tarot cards, it's totally different than trying to understand a theorem in mathematics or understand a law of physics. It's not some objective truth that everyone's going to agree on and always follow a logical and consistent pattern. What the tarot cards are a set of rich archetypal imagery that represents the structure of the psyche and represents the structure of a universe in a very dreamlike, flowing way, holistic way, where things bleed into each other, things are open to interpretation, but this is because one is working with the unconscious mind, one is working with intuition. And so one just has to approach these different systems in with different mindsets. You can't go into working with tarot like you would with physics, and you can't go into working with physics like you would with tarot. It's not going to work. But you can use it in a synergistic way, which is what we talk about in meta-rationalism, where, for example, you can use the tarot to unlock intuitive insights, just like you might go into an altered state of consciousness or meditation or whatever to unlock intuitive insights. But afterwards, you use your reason to reflect on those intuitive insights to make sure that they are something that is real and not some kind of delusion or misinterpretation. So this article continues by saying what he aimed at through the use of divination was to accelerate the process of individuation, the move towards wholeness and integrity by means of a playful combination of archetypes. So what Jung is talking about here is the process of individuation is the move towards wholeness. What the process of individuation is about making the unconscious conscious. So to become aware of all your unconscious structures in the psyche and getting them to be integrated in a way where they are working together towards towards making yourself whole and complete. And so what I mean by this is, look, you have your conscious aspect and your unconscious aspect. Your conscious aspect is a tiny sliver compared to your unconscious. Your unconscious is a vast, deep ocean, and your consciousness is just a little piece of ice peeking up above. Your life is dictated largely by the unconscious processes. The unconscious is like all the programs running in the background that you're not aware of. So like when you use your phone, you're not aware of the operating system. The operating system is what allows everything to run on your phone, but you're not watching the code and all the different systems and processes that the operating system is running. You're not seeing all that. You're not supposed to see all that. If you did see it, it would be very complicated and make it difficult to work. So in the background of your mind, all like your operating system, there's all these processes running. But the problem is that in an operating system, all the processes work together in an integrated, coherent way. Not the same with your unconscious. In your unconscious, you can have many drives that are conflicted and actually working against each other and aren't in your best interest. So for example, a very, very quick example of this is your shadow self. Your shadow self is in your unconscious, and it's the reservoir of all those aspects of you that were cut off from your conscious self because they were deemed to be negative or bad or wrong by society. So they're all the aspects of you that were deemed negative, bad, or wrong by society that you exhibited, those traits you exhibited. So you denied those, cut those off, put them in your unconscious, and lock them away. Well, that exists in your shadow now, and in your shadow, this can manifest in your life in a lot of extremely negative ways. It can lead to shadow projection, where you begin to hate people that exhibit those qualities because it unconsciously reminds you that you actually have those qualities. It can lead you to addiction, because when you get drunk, it can lower your inhibition and let those qualities come out sometimes. And this has a psychic release when you're releasing that built up energy. So you're going to be drawn back to those things which allow your shadow to be present. That's just one example. You have many unconscious drives, and your shadow self is one of those, and you can see where it can cause a lot of conflict in your life. So what individuation in terms of Jungian psychology is about, and what we call inner star actualization, what it's about is about making the unconscious conscious and integrating it, which basically means, for example, with the shadow self, to become aware of the contents in your shadow and addressing them in a way where you're dealing with them rather than locking them away and ignoring them. And when you deal with them in a healthy way, now it's not being built up in your shadow and it's not causing destruction in your life. You've recognized it. You've acknowledged it. You've recognized it. You've acknowledged it, and you've found a way to deal with it. So what this is all about is about finding out all these different unconscious drives in your mind and getting them all to work together in a way that you are a unified whole mind with all your drives working together in unity instead of working against each other. So this is the process of individuation. This is the process of inner star actualization. And what the tarot deck, especially the major arcana, can represent are the different structures of the psyche. Certain cards can represent the shadow. Certain cards can represent the ego. Certain cards can represent just the ability to make choices. Certain cards can represent intuition in the unconscious. Certain cards can represent the consciousness. Other cards represent wholeness and unity. Other cards represent division. And some cards represent the anima. Some cards represent the animus. All these cards represent different structures of the psyche. And one can actually interpret the major arcana when they're laid out in a linear way as the unfoldment or the evolution of the psyche, as well as the unfoldment and the evolution of the universe as well, in a symbolic, archetypal, metaphorical way. Because remember, we're working with the intuition here. We're not working with clear, consistent, logic, linear thinking. We're in the realm of intuition. We're in the realm of dreams. We're in the realm of symbolism and archetypes. So, as another mystical psychologist, Alejandro Jodorowsky, put it, by the way, Alejandro Jodorowsky is an amazing director. Check out his movies. They're very, very interesting, very cool. Anyway, Alejandro Jodorowsky is a very interesting individual, to say the least. Another mystical psychologist says, the tarot will teach you how to create a soul. And that's exactly right. And because remember, what you are is not a body, you are an eternal mind. So when we even talk about the evolution of the mind, we're not even necessarily talking about the evolution of a mind in a single life, but we can look at it as the evolution of an eternal mind, an eternal soul, or what we call a zeta. Because a zeta or eternal soul or an eternal mind is simply a system of frequency patterns of evolving information that forms these different structures. So what the tarot maps out is the formation of different structures in a zetic mind or an eternal mind in a very metaphorical and archetypal way. Again, where you can look at cards like the Empress representing the unconscious, the Magician representing the ability to make choices, etc. So Jung perceived the tarot as an alchemical game, which in his words attempts the union of opposites. Like the I Ching, it presents a rhythm of negative and positive, loss and gain, dark and light. Much later in 1960, a year before his death, Jung seemed less sanguine about tarot and the occult, or at least downplayed their mystical divinatory power, for a language more suited to the laboratory. As he wrote in a letter about his attempts to use these methods. Under certain, and this is a quote by Jung, under certain conditions, it is possible to experiment with archetypes, as my astrological experiment has shown. As a matter of fact, we had begun such experiments at the C.G. Jung Institute in Zurich, using the historically known intuitive, that is, synchronistic methods. But we had few co-workers and too little means, so we could not go on and had to stop. They didn't have funding. So, as in Jung's many other creative reappropriations of mythical, alchemical, and religious symbolism, his interpretations of the tarot inspired those with mystical leanings to undertake their own Jungian investigations into parapsychology and the occult. And then it just goes into a little bit about this. But what I really want to talk about here and note specifically. So when we're talking about the tarot, all right, there's different ways to interpret the tarot. The way most people interpret tarot is pretty damaging and dangerous. If they interpret it as just this magical system that tells them the future, this can lead to a lot of problems, people becoming overly reliant on it, treating it like another religion. They can't make decisions about it. Now, you can also use the tarot to unlock deep intuitive insights in your mind. You can use it as a canvas for the unconscious to project on. That's essentially what you're doing. Your unconscious is always looking for something to project on. This is why, like I mentioned on shadow projection, when this can lead to you hating other people that have the characteristics in your shadow, because your unconscious mind is projecting. Your unconscious mind projects those shadow qualities and goes, oh, you know, let's say that you have an anger problem. You might go, oh, I hate people that are angry all the time, can't stand them. But really it's because you have an anger problem that's in your shadow that you don't even know that's there, that you're not acknowledging. Or a really famous example of this is people who hate gay people, and they're like, oh, I hate gay people, I can't stand them. And they do that to cover up the fact that they actually have homosexual tendencies in their shadow that they don't want to acknowledge. So unconsciously, it relieves this psychic tension for them to be able to hate people like that, because you know, they're convincing themselves, oh, look at how much I hate those people. I could never be like them. I hate them so much. But actually, they have that content within themselves. But that's just an example of projection. Your psyche is constantly projecting. Your unconscious is constantly projecting. So what you're doing with the tarot is giving it rich symbolism to project on, because this is highly archetypal symbolic imagery. And so just like when your unconscious recognizes something and projects on, this is giving your psyche a map to project on, and then you can discover parts about yourself. But you have to be highly aware of yourself, highly self-reflective, and like look at the cards and think about, okay, well, what about this image is really popping out for me? What is it making me feel? What is it bringing up? And then understanding, why am I bringing that up? And is this related to some things that I need to address, some things that I need to focus on, or whatever. So you could do a you know, pull cards about because you want to improve your love life. Oh, my love life has been not so good lately with my partner. Let me do some cards. And what you're doing then, and when you're looking at the cards, you're having your unconscious mind project on it. And this could bring up things that you aren't consciously aware of. You might notice some feature on the card that's I don't know, has to do with care. and for some reason, like, that's really popping out to you and you're not sure why, and you look at it and you start to reflect on it and think about it and go, wow, you know what? I really haven't been that caring to my partner. I really need to be more caring towards them. And so you see, you've given your unconscious material to project on, and by looking at that and seeing what it brings out and then doing analysis on it to see why it's bringing that out, you can have a lot of great insights. What you don't want to do is pull cards and go, oh, well, I mean, the tarot, according to this book here, it says I need to break up with my partner, so I guess I have to because the cards are right. See, that's a problem. You see the difference when the card rules your life versus the cards helping you unlock your intuitive powers. So that is a healthy way to use cards. So that's one thing that the cards allow for, is unconscious projection, a canvas for unconscious projection, which can be very, very powerful and very helpful for unlocking your intuition. What it also does is it mirrors and shows the development of the mind. The major arcana especially shows the developmental process of the mind. And not only that, but it also shows the developmental structure of the universe as well. And it does this, of course, from a archetypal, symbolic way. And so in this sense, one could kind of say that they have a kind of predictive power. They have a predictive power in that you can recognize a certain pattern and see that another pattern is going to unfold. Just like you can know that a baby is going to grow into a toddler and is going to grow into an adult, etc. They're not going to be able to tell you particulars. They're not going to tell you if you're going to get a raise at work or not next week. That's not what it's about. But so ultimately, does tarot tell the future? Not really. In the way that people think telling the future entails? No. But what it does is it provides a canvas for your unconscious mind to project on, for you to understand yourself and unlock your intuition. And it models the developmental process of you as an eternal mind and the developmental process of the universe itself. So in that sense, if you want to get an idea of the formal unfolding of the universe, it predicts the future in that way, in that it shows the unfolding of the universe, or the unfolding or the development of a mind. But it's not about particular details. It's about, and I talked, if you want more info on what I mean here, take a look at my video on Gnostic prophecies. I'll put a link at the end of the video. I'll have it pop up. And that really is about understanding how you can understand how reality is going to unfold in a formal way, but not in the way that people normally think of it, in terms of contingent facts, but more in terms of a necessary unfoldment and logical structure of existence. Now, so what I really want to know from you guys is, for those who don't know, we are also at times reading from a book called The Law of One. Now, The Law of One is a set of channeled material by an entity that claims to be Ra, a higher being, a higher dimensional or alternate dimensional being. Now, whether that is true or not, that remains to be seen. We're not making any claims whether it's true or isn't. It could be a hoax, it could be real, but it has very interesting information. And the reason why I bring it up is because the Law of One, the information that Ra gives, actually discusses tarot cards, and it gives what, in my opinion, is the most interesting and what I feel to be the most accurate description of the major arcana. And of course, what's it doing? It's doing so in terms of the evolution of mind, mental evolution. It's tracking mental evolution. So my question to you guys is that something you want to see? If you guys want to see that, because I think talking about this is one thing, but actually going through the cards step by step and showing how each one unfolds and leads to another in terms of mental evolution, I think is to actually go through it, I think is another thing. So if you guys want to see that, if you want to see the Law of One interpretation of each of the cards, and we could probably do a video about each card and see how it unfolds into the other. If you're interested in that, let me know. Tell me in the comments. I want to know if that is something that you are interested in or not. Now, one other thing that I want to make a point about the tarot that's very, very important is that when we're dealing with archetypal imagery here, it's all up into interpretation. It's all up to interpretation. There's no one right way to interpret it, because ultimately that's not how archetypal intuitive symbolism works. It's about what resonates with you. So there may be a way that I believe is the most accurate, or what I believe is the best interpretation, but that doesn't mean that it is for you. When you're dealing with the realm of, it's like a dream. When you have a dream, if I have a dream about the ocean and you have a dream about the ocean, they could mean completely different things. You might be terrified of the ocean and having dreams of the ocean because you have anxiety about something. Well, I might be having a dream of the ocean because for me, the ocean represents the unconscious mind, and I'm dreaming about exploring the unconscious or something of that nature. So when it comes to exploring things like this, there's no one set of rules or way that is the correct way. It's like art. This is the beauty of this type of thing, is that we can explore it in many different ways. But the main thing to understand is that it's an interaction and connection to your unconscious, and you want it to use it as a tool to unlock your power, not as a power to be used over you. So if you enjoyed this video, hey, check out my one on Gnostic prophecies. I think it's something that you'll probably really enjoy. It has a lot in common with this. And I also want to, hey, just say, please like and subscribe if you enjoy this video. And we have a members only video that's coming out right after this that is called The Universe's Secret Code. Is God the programmer behind it? So that's what we're exploring. And if you want to be a part of that, you can, and access all of our members only videos by supporting on Patreon. It's the best way to support my work. Any tier, you get access to all of our members only videos, or here on YouTube, if you support on tier 2 or higher, you also get access to that. And just remember as well, never feel obligated to support monetarily. You don't have to. There are plenty of free ways you can support, like liking, subscribing, and sharing. But I want to give a big shout out to everyone who does support, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, the Halloween Mom, DB, Enki, Nusalina, Paul Rogers, Eric Fire, Masam, Christopher Smith, and everyone else. Thank you very much.